Before we get started, I'd just like to go over a few items so you know how to participate this evening. Please do note this event is being recorded. If you do not wish to attend a recorded event, please disconnect now. As this is a webinar, neither your mic nor webcam will be enabled. As today's event will be highly interactive, we encourage you to submit questions to our panelists in real time by clicking the Q&A option in your Zoom webinar controls and typing in your question. If a similar question has already been raised, please use the upvote option to avoid duplication. If you have questions that relate to the broader themes of ethical hacking, we will collate these and do our best to address them at the end of the event. So I'd now like to introduce our panelist today, Katie Paxton-Fear. Katie is a lecturer in cybersecurity at Manchester Metropolitan University. However, in her free time, she's a bug bounty hunter and educational YouTuber. She started out hacking in June 2019 during a HackerOne mentorship program and now hopes to be a mentor to others. Katie's produced over 40 videos on bug bounty hunting for an audience of over 20,000 subscribers on YouTube. Aimed at a beginner audience, these go from find your first bug, to how to use specific tools, to how to find specific bug classes. During her time bug hunting, Katie has been to 4 HackerOne live events and has found bugs in some of HackerOne's biggest customers, including the US Department of Defense. In today's webinar, Katie will show you the basics of web application hacking and get you involved too. A short presentation will be followed by an interactive demo, leaving plenty of time for questions. All the vulnerabilities Katie shows are real ones that she has found and got paid for. Katie, a very warm welcome and over to you.
Thank you. So, hi everyone. My name is Katie, and today I'm going to be talking about how hacking can be fun and basically how to hack legally and also get paid for it. So that's the important thing. It's both legal and it gets you money. So this is going to be a kind of interactive session. I'm going to present some theory and then we're going to be doing some hacking together. We're not going to be hacking a real website because I've tried to do that in the past and that's gone horribly wrong. But I have got a demo that I've created, which is really similar to what you see, right? So I already got introduced, but I thought I'd also introduce myself because as a speaker, you're legally required to have one of these slides to prove you know what you're talking about. So here's the proof I know what I'm talking about. My name is Katie. I'm a lecturer in cybersecurity at Manchester Metropolitan University. I'm actually also a PhD student. I've just handed in my dissertation, so I am like almost finished with my PhD at Cranfield, and that's how I'm involved with the Wiltshire branch. But I'm probably more well known for bug hunting. I mean, there's definitely some people here who know me for my bug hunting. If you already know me, do you want to put like a wave in the chat? But yeah, I do bug hunting and I make educational videos on YouTube. So I make weekly cybersecurity videos on a really broad range of topics. And I sent that bio to the organizers when the event first got started. And it's now incorrect because now I have over 25,000 subscribers. But I have a kind of formal qualifications. I've got a bachelor's in cybersecurity, but I am kind of self-taught in security. I didn't know security when I got started in all of this. I've literally just taught myself. And like previously, I was a data scientist and a developer actually. So I've really kind of moved quite differently in my career. And yeah, I make videos. So if you listen to what I'm talking about today and you go, wow, that sounds fun, I want to do it. I have that's what I call Bug Hunting 2020, which has a bunch of videos that kind of get through the entire thing. What we're going to be doing today is like a whirlwind tour through bug hunting, like absolutely like going over everything. So with that in mind, let's jump straight in. So introduction to bug bounties. What are bugs? How do bug hunters find them? So this is kind of an article that was written, I think in 2019. The photo was taken in 2019. And these are people who have made over $1 million doing bug bounties. So their job is to find vulnerabilities in software. And that's it. That is their job. That is what they do. That is what they do. Some of them do it full time, some of them do it part time, but they're all kind of well known for doing this. And they might be millionaires, and you're probably thinking, well, how are they making so much money? They're bug bounty hunters. So it's, if you've heard of the concept like red teaming or penetration testing, it's really similar, but the concept is kind of like freelance. While a penetration tester actually can go into a physical building and look at the network in there, bug hunters, we kind of do it from the outside. We do it black box. We don't really know what we're looking at. We don't really know what we're looking for. We're often confused, sometimes quite annoyed. But it gives us kind of a different perspective on how systems work. And this is what companies value, and they want to have freelance people coming in and hacking them. It's because what they want to see is different vulnerabilities. Penetration testers, kind of, they have very similar educations. They kind of think the same. They've had the same kind of training. But somebody who's a bug bounty hunter can be anybody. It could be me. It could be somebody who's done penetration testing for 20 years. It could be somebody who started last week. And all of us have the opportunity to find bugs. And so for low risk vulnerabilities, that could be like 100 quid, right? Not that much money. But for major vulnerabilities, that can be over £80,000. And I once saw somebody who got over £80,000 for one vulnerability. That was it. And it was a known issue, and it was really silly that it was left in. But you know what? It paid out. And what kind of bug bounty hunters are, especially the professional ones, are experts at breaking security controls. Like, bug hunters are the kind of people who would be given like a piece of technology, would break it into 1,000 pieces and could not put it back together again. And the bounty amounts depend on, how much people are willing to pay, but also, industries. So you don't see it as often, or you see it more often in things like computer software and less in things like local government. And in fact, on kind of the government side, there's actually been a real push, especially in the US, to get government agencies involved in bug bounty hunting because it's so valuable. But you're probably thinking, yeah, they're special, they're super geniuses, they know everything, but they're not. So I started bug hunting in June 2019. Never had any experience before, didn't really know what I was doing, probably couldn't tell you what penetration testing was. I was invited as a mentee to one of these HackerOne live events. You can see my 2 tweets there from 2019 when I was very excited about finding my first bug, which I found on Uber. And then after that, I got, like, in 2019, just before all COVID kicked off, I had been to Las Vegas, Vancouver, Seattle, and LA in like 4 months. I was going to America every single month. It was like I was commuting. And that wasn't paid for by me. That was paid for completely by HackerOne, who ship people out. So I only started in June 2019. And I've made like over £5,000 in bounties. I found my first bug literally in a few hours. So you really don't need to be a special super genius. And I promise you, I'm not actually that good at this. It's just a case of how diverse people think about problems. Really great example is I went to this event in Seattle. And when I was in Seattle, I was listening to the presentation by somebody who works at Facebook. And there was an issue at Facebook, a security issue, or kind of a security issue, where women in India weren't showing their profile pictures. And literally no one at Facebook understood, because none of them had that kind of diverse background that could actually put the pieces together. And that they eventually turned out, I should probably finish the story, eventually turned out that people in India were often being impersonated. So what Facebook needed were these better impersonation controls. So what you had here was like a problem which was kind of unknown to them, and they didn't really understand it just because they didn't have that diverse perspective. And this is one of the main advantages of bug bounty hunting, and why somebody like me can start out knowing nothing and become successful at it, because it's not necessarily about like being a super genius. It's about having a different brain and thinking a little bit differently from somebody else. So with that in mind, let's have a chat. What are bugs? Now, usually when we're in computing, we talk about bugs, we're talking about software bugs, where the bug can be anything. It's just this breaks. But actually, when we talk about bugs in an ethical hacking like context, we're actually talking about security vulnerabilities. And what makes kind of bug hunting different is that when we find a bug, we have to exploit it. We put on our like most evilest mustache. We put on like our hood, on our black hoodie. We put on the techno music and we go, time to hack this. And we play the attacker. And that's really what makes it very different, is that we go into that perspective saying, okay, this is vulnerability and here's how you can exploit it. And sometimes that means, bypassing protections and looking at kind of specific types of vulnerabilities and how they get caused. But fundamentally, what we're doing is we're breaking in. We are putting in that kind of black hat brain and putting it to good use. So, okay, what do bug hunters actually do? But actually, bug hunting is not that difficult to get started out with. You need a piece of software called Burp Suite. Don't worry, I'll be showing you that. A target, so somebody to hack. Some knowledge about bug hunting. And those are our ingredients. And our recipe is hack the target, and then we write a report, then we get paid. And that's generally how it works. So let's talk about Burp Suite. So Burp Suite is a proxy, so it lets you see what your web browser is doing. So usually when you use the internet, you don't actually see the physical requests that the web browser makes. But what we want to do is, again, we want to break things. So we need to look inside that. So we just want to modify requests, and it has a ton of tools. We'll talk about that soon because I'll show you how to use it. So then we've got choosing a target. So the two biggest bug bounty platforms are HackerOne and BugCrowd, and they are the same mostly. They have different targets. They have kind of different partners, and what they kind of provide in the bug bounty kind of space is things like triaging. So if you don't have a security team, having a security expert that you can call and be like, is this actually a vulnerability? And then we have payment. So they also deal with things like, how do you actually get paid? But people hack on both. It's not like you pick Apple or like Google. You can hack both. People do. Often some of the biggest hackers hack both. So who can you hack? Well, here are some people you've heard of. So we have Hack the US Air Force. If you want to hack the military, that'll be HackerOne. Etsy, BugCrowd, PayPal, HackerOne, MasterCard, BugCrowd. Tesla is BugCrowd. People actually hack Tesla cars. So depending on what you want to hack, they have different agreements with different providers. That's all it is. Okay. Let's talk about Burp. So Burp is a proxy. You send all your traffic through Burp, and then you can resend requests, and new requests, change requests, intercept requests before they're sent. But why do we use Burp? And I said this before, but mainly what we're doing is web-based penetration testing. So we need to be able to edit the requests that our browser sends to the application. And Burp gives us kind of like an IDE. And it comes with a big range of features. So let's have a look at Burp. So this is Burp. This is the free version of the newest version. I think it's a little bit, it might be one of the versions down because I didn't update it. Okay, so the first tab you have here is dashboard. You can completely ignore everything on the dashboard because half of it is an advertisement for the pro version. You can totally do bug hunting for free. You do not need to pay money to get started. So this is where we kind of start. Then we have our target tab. So you can see I've already done some stuff. And what this shows is every website that our browser is hit by its domain. So you can see here that I've got this website. If I go down here, you can see all of the requests my browser has made. So if I go here, you can see the raw HTTP request. If I go down here, you can see the raw response with all the HTML in it. Then we have proxy. Now, proxy is used for one thing, and that is to make sure intercept is turned off, because intercept is on by default, and it is really annoying. Burp also has this built-in browser as well, which is what I'm using over here, which automatically will send anything you go to here. So if I go and type, it doesn't really matter. If I go here and do yahoo.com, you can see if I now open my target that I'm getting a bunch of requests that are all going to Yahoo. And it's okay to touch Yahoo because Yahoo has a bug bounty program. So what else have we got? So that's proxy. We just turn intercept off. If you keep it on, this is what happens. Nothing loads, but all of the requests do. So what you might want to do is maybe play around with the request before it gets sent. So we can add stuff to it. Brilliant. So The next one is Intruder. So Intruder is a brute forcing tool, and we'll show you how to use that in a bit. We then have Repeater, which allows us to repeat requests. So if I go back to here, let's say I want to, let's look at Yahoo. I want to look at Yahoo, send to Repeater, bam, the request is there, and I can edit it and send it again. And literally all of the other ones you can ignore. All you need to get started are the first, or I guess not the first tab, but tabs 2, 3, 4, and 5. That's all you need. You do not need to look at everything else. So cool, that's Burp. And that's a very quick introduction to Burp. So what I'm going to recommend you do is download it for yourself and have a play around. Even if you're not necessarily planning on doing bug bounty hunting, it's really interesting to see what web browsers actually do under the hood, because we just kind of don't really think about it that much. So that is a whirlwind tour of Burp. Don't worry if that was very, very quick, because we're going to be doing it together in a bit. Right. So that's Burp. That is the tool of the trade. This is what majority of bug hunters actually use. There's also OWASP Zap, which is created by an OWASP group. So OWASP is the Open Web Application Security Project. They like web application security, shockingly enough. Okay, so we now talk about APIs, because APIs are some of my favorite things to hack, because it feels like nobody knows how to secure an API. I know people who have hacked banks just through their API, and that's it. But if you don't necessarily know what an API is, here's the kind of introduction here. An API stands for Application Programming Interface. And what it is a bunch of text files, because computers find it difficult to communicate with each other because they're very dumb. And what it does is provide a computer-friendly method of interacting with a data source or backend logic. So you can kind of see there, if I just put the little laser pointer on, you can see it sits between the database here and the mobile app and web app, because developers are also very lazy and they don't like programming things more than once. And that's great for us because it means that we're hacking one API and that's all we need to think about. And it means developers can be lazy. So what do they look like? So usually APIs are these JSON files, which is a way of representing objects. Kind of confusing, let me explain. So here we're saying get the resource employee with the ID of 1. So that's all we're saying is, okay, there's some employees and they have something between, 1 and 10. So we put this in and go employee /1/2/ whatever. That's our ID. We can then see the actual employee's details in the JSON. So JSON is split up in kind of objects and key value pairs. So we have here the key employee has the value of Max Musterman. We know that the employee with the ID number 1 is in fact Mr. Max Musterman. That's his actual name. And then they can also have like related records as well. So you'll see here that we also have the items. So this could be, say, things he owns, it could be things he's interacted with. We don't necessarily know. And then we've got something related to tables there. And really, it looks really much like a very much for computers, and it is, but it's not that difficult to read. And that's why developers like JSON, and that's why hackers like it too. And usually these JSON APIs are called RESTful. Now, RESTful used to stand for something, which is representative state transfer. A RESTful API at this point is just these predictable endpoints. Doesn't necessarily follow the whole original RESTful idea. So you can tell you found a RESTful API when you have a very clear create kind of endpoint. So endpoint in this context means URL that does something. So it's a 404 page, not an endpoint. If it actually exists, endpoint. Then we have the read endpoint here. So this is what we're looking at before. So get the post or with ID 1. So it's get a new post. And we have update. So update and delete are a little bit weird because developers are really bad at actually implementing it properly. Fun fact, my first vulnerability was because of this issue. So usually update and delete use put and delete, but a lot of browsers don't actually have that working. So usually it's this, it uses a post and it has some weird stuff. We'll see it, don't worry. And what's great about these is that we can actually predict more endpoints. We can say, you know, we're looking at YouTube. We know that YouTube has videos. We know that videos have comments. We know that YouTube must have users. We know that there must be like community posts. We know there must be likes. And we can make those kind of assumptions. So, you know, if get video with the ID 1 exists, we should be able to also delete it. We should also be able to get comments. As long as we kind of know what we're expecting to see, we can predict it. They're very widely used, so they're very, very common, and they usually return JSON. So the first step when you actually hack one of these APIs is to enumerate it, because one of the issues is that you don't really know what's there. Like, you have to know the resource names to be able to actually hack an API, if you don't see it. So what we do is we basically test if they exist. We go in and we go, okay, does users exist? Does videos exist? Does comments exist? And this is what we do. And we want to kind of figure out how the web application might be built, looking at what it does, looking at its functionality and going, okay, this is what I expect. So we want to use our knowledge to find more resources, because that means more things to hack. And what we really want to see is the most API endpoints we can possibly see, because those are all vulnerable and those will get us money. So we absolutely want to see how far we can push it. So, well, how do you usually do that? It's really hard, because you need to know the resource names. So you have to know it has users, you have to know it has videos, you have to know it has comments. There's probably a bunch of stuff in YouTube under the hood that powers all of that we have no idea about. So one kind of approach to this is using common resource names. And you have these kind of lists of all these resource names. Sometimes you can find more tailored lists depending on what you're hacking, especially if you hack something that's very, very common. But honestly, most applications have these custom resources because they're all different. So you have to use your own kind of knowledge of how that might be built in order to actually figure out what it could be. So if you're thinking of forum, you're looking for posts, replies, you probably always want to check for users. Looking at a news website, you probably don't want posts, you probably want article, right? So you need to change how you approach it depending on what you're actually hacking. And usually what you would do is you'd put this all into Burp and then you'd replace the resource name and done. Very simple, because I'm going to demo it in a second. So let's talk about what issues we've found. So if we've got all of these endpoints, we know all of them are, how do we actually hack them? So the OWASP, so Open Web Application Security Project, has a API security project inside of it. And what it is a bunch of people who do API security who came together and said, here are what we think are the top issues, and then they published them. So actually, why is this important? Because there are like 10 of these and they use a lot of words to describe something quite straightforward. So a lot of them are things like binding client data to data models without proper properties filtering based on a whitelist usually needs some mass assignment. Very difficult to understand. I'm going to break these down. So we're going to be talking about the first one, the third one, and the fifth one, because who doesn't love odd numbers? So let's go through those. So API 1 is called broken object level authorization. So the kind of definition they give is APIs tend to expose endpoints that handle object identifiers, IDs, creating a wide attack surface level access control issue. That's a mouthful. Object level authorization checks should be considered in every function that accesses data source using input from a user. What does that mean? That means don't trust what the user's telling you, put an if statement in. So breaking it down, we call these in the bug hunter community an idle. Well, what's an idle? Well, let's say you've got, a user here. This is blue background man. And he says, please have him get the document which has number 1000, right? And then I got my back. Yeah, of course, here you go. But let's say he asks for 1002. Now, he doesn't actually own this resource. It's owned by green background man. But it returns it anyway. That is that vulnerability in a nutshell. One of the simplest ways to resolve it is an if statement, and you find these on live applications all the time. So basically, the API is letting you access a resource. without less like checking that you can actually have permission to do it. Any kind of IDs are usually vulnerable to this. So APIs especially. It's very difficult though, because you have to kind of go through these manually, and that kind of sucks. But it's very much a repetitive process that happens like over and over and over. You basically go through these one at a time. So it's quite a straightforward bug. It's got a really long name. Excessive data exposure. So looking forward to generic implementations, developers tend to expose all object properties without considering their individual sensitivity, relying on clients to perform the data filtering before displaying it to the user. Lot of words, again, to explain something very simple, which is don't display loads of information than you don't need to. It's information disclosure. It's you don't check that someone has the right to see that information. An API just simply returns too much information when it doesn't need to. And I have a story about this. So one of the vulnerabilities I found is, so you could basically use one endpoint to see the entire database, not because it was vulnerable to something like SQL injection, but because it just told you. It was just like, oh, you wanted the database? Here you go. Here's the entire structure of the database, which made it really easy to test the rest of the API for issues. And some of that information can actually be a huge security risk, like GDPR level, quite dangerous security risk. We're talking about personal information, credit card information, financial information. A lot of this can actually be exposed without developers realizing it. And one way this kind of happens is because developers will make APIs because they're lazy, would really like to know literally like, oh, I'll just put in all of the information, I'll decide what to display. And they never actually remove the information they don't need. So it ends up being there as kind of this legacy, while in development, this is what we did. So in terms of bug hunting though, what we want to do is keep an eye out for any endpoint that returns a bunch of stuff. If we see like loads and loads of characters, we should instantly be like, that is suspicious. It's not always a bug. Sometimes it's going to depend on like the actual business level risk. Bug bounties are not paid based on like how dangerous the actual vulnerability, bug bounties are paid on how dangerous the actual vulnerability is, not on the bug class. So it's not a case of, oh, you found this bug, therefore you get $100,000. It's very much what the business risk is. So if you think about like a medical application, they might care a lot about things like excessive data exposure, because that could be like in the US, that can be stuff like HIPAA. In the UK, that's definitely a GDPR breach, but not even like a regular GDPR breach, because that's now protected characteristics, people's health data. So it's very kind of the case that you pay based on how dangerous it actually is, not like what it does. Okay, so how do you actually find one of these? You basically just keep hitting the API until something drops out. Anytime you see a lot of information being returned, you've just got to ask yourself, is that a risk? Would I keep that in there? Is this dangerous? And that sounds kind of silly to be like asking yourself those questions. But bug hunting is all about impact. It is all about scaring somebody so badly that they want to pay out simply because the thought of this being live is terrifying. So the final one is broken function level authorization. Complex access control policies with different hierarchies, groups, and roles, and an unclear separation between administrative and regular functions tend to lead to authorization flaws. By exploiting these issues, attackers gain access to users, resources, and/or administrative functions. What does that mean? It means you have an admin control panel or admin functionality, which doesn't actually do anything. Like, you're not checking that you're actually an admin before you do that. So what does it mean? We call them permission IDORs. You can do an admin action even though you're a regular user. any complex hierarchy is vulnerable to this vulnerability. Like as soon as you start having admins, moderators, users, you look at something like enterprise applications where you have like a manager level, you might have another management level and a third management level. That's when you're like sitting there testing every single one of those to see whether or not you can do something as a privileged user. So the way I like to use these is using containers in Firefox. I'm not going to demonstrate that today, but I have made a video on it. But you log into an admin account, you log into a regular account at the same time, and you see whether or not you can use the admin functionality by changing the cookie to the regular user, essentially logging on as a regular user and doing administrative action. And there's a program called Authorize, which does this automatically for you, but I'm very much a fan of not doing it, doing it manually because I think it's more fun. So I went through those very quickly, and there's a reason, because you do not learn best by watching me talk and having slides you probably already have access to. You learn best by doing, and that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be hacking together. So let me see if I can just end the show. There we go. Okay, so, right. It is time for you to put on your hacking hats, everybody. Now, this is a, I would like you to participate in this one. So, if you're awake, type in a yes in the chat, type in a funny joke, type in, numbers. Let's see how many people actually are awake and alive and actually want to start hacking. Awesome, great. I see you all in the chat. Excellent. So actually, if you have any questions for me now about the theory side of things, you can totally ask them, and I will get through them. We're going to make the poor people managing the chat very sad because we're about to spam the chat. So, welcome to Generic University. And as you can see here, this is a lovely under construction website that we're going to hack. And we can see here, we've got like some university logos and under construction. We've got somebody's claiming to make it. And we've got these two links, contact IT and report a security vulnerability. So what is the first thing you think we want to do? What would be your first kind of gut instinct? So we've got like a random page here. We've got like a link to log on, contact IT, report security vulnerability. What are you thinking we should do first? View source, okay. Let's go with what David said. Let's look at the page source. So we can do that here, or we can do it via Burp. And we can see here, if we look at this, I'm just going to add this to our scope because it will make it a little bit easier. So to add stuff to your scope, you just right click and add to scope. You go, no. So you go filter, hiding not found items, show only in scope items. Now, don't be tempted to click these buttons. They look very much like they're buttons that you want to be clicked, but you don't. You just click off and it kind of hides everything. And I'm going to do the same here. So in the proxy, there's an HTTP history, and it just does everything by time. So the target window shows you it by domain and by like folders and stuff. The proxy one shows you it by time. So it's just a little bit more easy. So show only in scope items, click off, and bam, we've done it. So David said to go view the source, and Kinga said to check network traffic. So this is our checking network traffic, and this is our view source. And we can see here we've got some JavaScript. And what is that JavaScript doing? Well, we've got some kind of reference here to an API. Great. We love APIs. So we can go here and we can see we've also got the API there as well. Excellent. So we have APIs. What's the first thing I said that we should look at once we get to API hacking? I realize I went through it quite quickly, but other people have seen this demo before, I think. Yeah, so let's see if we can change this to a different user ID. So there's a great way to do this. We could do this manually and do 1 through 6, but let's do it automatically. So we're going to send it to Intruder. And this is our brute forcing tool. So we're going to go to positions. We're going to clear the little simoleons. Now I play The Sims, so this looks like a simoleon symbol. We're going to highlight this and add a little simoleon there. That says this is what we want to change. So now we need payloads. Now we can type in a simple list, and people have said list API names. Absolutely. So let's look at the numbers first. We're going to go down here. We're going to go to numbers, and you can see we can generate numbers. So from 1 to 7, and a step of 1. So that will generate, 1 through 7. So 7 requests. And we want to make sure it's sequential. Great. So we're sending a total number of 7 requests. So we're going to go here and we're going to go start attack. And it's going to be kind of like throttled because it's the free version. But that's fine. You don't need to have things go quickly. Now you can see here that all of these have returned a 200 error, a 200 HTTP request. That means it's worked. So if we scroll down here, we can see the request. So this is user 1, the response. So we can see ID 1 and some people's names. So what immediately jumps out at you when you see this? So we've got the ID, we've got the name, an email verified at, created at, updated at, role ID. Does anything jump out at you immediately? Role and ID, absolutely. Role ID, now that's when we should be thinking, okay, access control. There's some kind of administrator there. So let's have a look. So we've got role ID 2. This user is role ID 1. So we've kind of got role ID 1 and role ID 2. Does anyone want to take a guess what those different role IDs might be? This one has a role ID of 3. 1 is admin. Yeah, absolutely. Role ID 1, that is straight up the administrative user. If we were looking to hack their account, this is the first thing we go to. This should be like yes, this is what we're looking for. Because it's the only one that has role ID 1. It is it starts with IT. It is suspicious. So we know that we've got administrative users. Excellent. So we know we can get users. Let's see if we can get more of that API, because at the moment we can only see users. Now, I'm going to change this to 1, so we get the first one. Actually, you know what? I'm going to change it to nothing. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to change the little simoleon to be where users is. And what it means is we're going to replace users. So everybody, this is, if I go down here, simple list, we can add stuff to the list here to test for different endpoints. So this is our website. We've got generic university, view your grades. We know there's some kind of administrative system. We know that it's got some user systems. What are we going to look for in this API? What endpoints do we want to see? Courses, students, yeah, excellent. Courses, student. I'm going to do the course. Might want class, departments. Anything else? What else do we want to try? Grades, yeah, grades, absolutely. Grade, we know it's a grade viewing system. That should be first on our mind. Subject, supervisor. We've got result, lecturers, faculty. I'm going to limit it because otherwise it'll take too long to run. Admin, maybe, administrator. We know that there's some kind of admin functionality. Maybe it's in the API. So great, we can do all of this. We can look for these. So let's do our attack. Do okay. And we'll just wait for it to run. So you can see here it will run. And we've got some 404s here. And that means that it hasn't worked. And that's fine because we're basically brute forcing it. We're trying to figure out what's there. And if we haven't got everything, then we haven't got everything. Now, what do we immediately see from this? Well, we've got a lot of 404s. We can ignore those. We've got a 401. So what is 401? We are unauthenticated. We don't have permission to see it. So immediately we want to be thinking, okay, how do we get an account? How do we get that kind of privilege escalation? But we do have grades here as well. So if we look at this, oh no, it's displaying all of the grades. Do you think this is a vulnerability? If you saw this, would you report it? Neil says, yeah, I totally agree with Neil. Displaying something like user IDs, probably not that big of a deal. A lot of people's emails aren't considered personal data by a lot of at least by programs. But you can absolutely match the ID here with the user ID and find out people's grades. Absolutely, definitely information that you should report. This would probably actually be quite a critical issue because it's grades. That can be very, very private. So what else do you think we should check? So we know we can read grades. What is the student's ultimate dream of being able to do? Like, we know we can read people's grades. Yeah, we want to change people's grades. Okay, so we're going to go here and we're going to send to repeater. Now, you will notice that before on the slides, there's the slide deck, I said, you know, RESTful APIs follow this kind of pattern. So we're going to try that kind of pattern. So if we go back to repeater here, first thing we're going to do is we can see that this says get. So immediately we want to do put, and maybe you want to change the grade to be the first grade, okay? We know this is a JSON-based API. So the other thing we need to do is we need to get some JSON. So what we're going to do is just take it from here. So we're going to go here, copy this, and put it into repeater. Scroll down, and then in the body, which is after line ID 14, we're going to put it in. Now let's change the grade to be 100. Now this isn't going to work. Can anyone tell me why this isn't going to work? Just curious as to what people think and whether or not anyone can get this. This took me so long to figure out as well when I was doing this demonstration. Cookie is a good idea. You actually have to change the content type. So you need to go here and do content type an application JSON. You see it accepts application JSON, so we need to tell the content type is application JSON as well. So we're going to go here and press send. As you can see, oh no, it actually worked. And we can go now, if we go up here and we change that put to a get again, and we open it up, we can see our change actually stuck. So are you going to report this? What do you think? Do you think this is an issue worth reporting if you were running a security program? Yeah, absolutely. This is definitely. Oh, actually, M. White said, why do you need to change the content type? How did you know that? I know that because I spent 3 hours trying to get the demonstration to work, which worked when I was developing it. And didn't work when I was testing it because I wasn't thinking that it has to also accept JSON. So it is trial and error is how I knew you had to do that. And what content type is saying is what the actual like request is sending. So by telling it that we need JSON, we're basically just confirming it. This is built in Laravel and Laravel requires it. So that's all. Okay, great. Now, if we can change a grade, what do you think our next approach might be? Now, we could try and delete things. We know it might be vulnerable to that. Absolutely. But what kind of thing are you thinking now? Because we have other endpoints here. And what endpoint immediately would be very great to be able to edit that we know about? So we know about grades. We know about users. Yeah, Jeff is absolutely on the ball, right? We need to create an admin user. So we can go here and let's go to our original one. Go to target, API users, send to repeater. We can confirm this by checking API roles. So if it has a role ID, it might have roles. And we'll just send that request. And you can see here, we can see what all the roles are. But we already guessed one is an admin. That's not that difficult. Okay. So let's make an admin user. Well, how do you think we can make an admin user? What are people thinking? Just kind of curious if anything stands out. Send a create request. Yeah, absolutely. We can try and post to admin with JSON data. But, you know, sometimes we kind of overthink things. If we go, you know, we've got a login functionality, register, sometimes things are just hidden in plain sight, and absolutely we need to like be thinking of the obvious as well. So we can create a user here. I'm just going to call it test@test.com. The password 123 123. Confirm password 123 123. I actually think it needs to do another 123 here. Okay, and we've registered an account. So what can we do? Well, we can go in here and we can go change this get. It's back to users. The last user was ID 7. Let's try user ID 8. We send this. We can see our test user. And we know exactly what we're going to do, right? We're going to do put. We're going to go content type application. I think it might be lowercase. Is it lowercase? Yes, application JSON. We're going to go down here. We're going to copy all this and just change our role ID to role ID 1, like this. Send it again, and now we're in admin user. So let's go back to the endpoint we couldn't see. So we know it's get API admin, and we don't need anything in the body, like this. So we can just delete that. Send the request. Oh, I haven't got the cookie set up properly. Place that. Give me the right cookie, please. There we go. Like this. Go to here. Go to our cookie. Place it with the new cookie because we've now logged in. Go here. Press send, and we can see the administrative endpoint. And we're very, very bad hackers. We see a delete. Oh yeah. We're pressing the delete button. Go to delete. The entire database is deleted. We go now to API users. We'll see only our account remains. Thank you very much. That is the end of the demonstration. If you would like to try out more, this is not the only things this API has that's vulnerable. Actually, we have information disclosure, we have brute forcing the API, finding someone's grades, edit a grade, make an account, access the admin control panel, but actually there's a lot more other vulnerabilities in there, including privilege escalation, vertical privilege escalation, cross-site scripting, blind cross-site scripting. If you want to have a go yourself, absolutely. So if you watch this presentation and you want to contact me, I'm very proud to say I'm now Googleable. This is like dream of mine, and you can actually find all of my details online. But I have a LinkedIn, Katie Paxton Fear. I have a Twitter at Insider PhD. I am literally the only person with my name. You cannot go wrong by Googling me. So thank you very much. If you have any more questions, I would be honored to answer them for you all. I'll leave my contact details on the slide as well.
Thanks, Katie. It's Keith again here. I've seen a few questions come in. I know you compressed your presentation down to a short period, much shorter than you normally do. But I'll now hand over to my colleague John, who I think is going to take through the open questions that still remain. John. You're still on mute, John.
I can't. Yeah, that's it. Am I off now? It didn't.
Yes, I can hear you.
It wouldn't unmute when I started. I'm going to respond verbally to one of the questions, which was, please slow down. I understand why the individual was asking that. However, my personal response to that individual was, this presentation is being recorded, and after it's been reviewed by the BCS, it will be made available to download, and you can watch it all again in slow-mo if you choose. I hope that there's that question. And I did also comment that you were going quite quickly because we have restricted you to a relatively short presentation because people do get tired of watching a Zoom presentation. But
yeah, I wanted to get to the demo, which is the interesting part. Like the theory is all great, but actually, what do you want to do apart from hack a real website?
Yeah, absolutely.
Tempting.
Another question that came up was what resource material or reading material would you recommend?
So for I also saw another question just a second ago for better understanding the core technologies. I'm going to recommend my own videos, and that's not because I'm narcissistic, but because I've actually made a lot of videos on that subject because it's really wide. Like web application security is a huge like field, and it includes a lot of different skills. Now, my advice is to start with this playlist, which is in a very specific order that kind of takes you through it quite slowly and kind of introduces those core kind of concepts. I've also got an entire playlist on my channel about API hacking, which does the exact same for APIs. So if you're interested in APIs specifically, you watch my video and go, I'd love to learn more about how APIs work. That's the place to start. But this first video here, how to get started with bug bounty, is literally every single resource I could find. And unfortunately, if you ask anybody else for their resources, now they recommend my content. So it's not actually me being narcissistic, I promise.
Okay, right you are. When we had the preamble some days ago, I did suggest to you that perhaps there could be an episode 2. Is that a possibility for the listeners of where you continue to develop for us?
Oh yeah, absolutely. If anybody wants to see me hack more of that API hacking demo and talk more about kind of the vulnerabilities in there, I can totally. Also, it's quite interesting how the code works, about like how the code actually causes vulnerabilities, which could totally make for a good in part 2. So yes, there is totally part 2.
Okay. Legal implications, I see somebody's put up. What are the legal implications of you poking somebody's website, and how are they going to feel about that?
Okay, so the UK law for the Computer Misuse Act says you have to have permission to access, or the law says you access a system without permission. Now, with a bug bounty platform, and I do recommend you do hack on bug bounty platforms, don't try this on other people's websites. You have permission. You have that explicit permission. At the very start of any bug bounty program, it will say, you know, safe harbor. If you conduct your testing within the scope of this agreement, there will be safe harbor and no one's going to come after you with legal issues. What I would recommend is to sign up for one of them and look at what they've got and then practice on those. There's also purposely vulnerable. So you saw my API, something that I made. But there's a ton of really good capture the flag exercises. And those are really great to get started with. HackerOne has Hacker 101, which has an excellent benefit because it also gives you invitations as you complete those challenges to have these kind of private programs which have fewer numbers of people on them. They're like fresher assets. They've not been around as much. So you've got more chance to finding something.
Okay, so that sort of, because I'm seeing a number of questions come up on chat and questions and answers. Just to answer the chat, it is a recorded presentation and can be downloaded at a later date. That link will be given to people that attended. And to answer the question that I'm seeing coming up, as I understand it, your recommendation is that you use the proper platforms to do this bug investigation. Don't go wild and just poke people for the fun of it, their systems, of course, but to actually use these platforms and the payment system coming from an anonymous attendee. Where does the payment system come in? It's all part of that platform, and they credit you with the fine.
Yeah, to kind of understand, to kind of explain it from like a company point of view, what you do is you'd say, we'd really like a bug bounty program. You'd usually start with something called a vulnerability disclosure program. And what that means is that there's no payments. So people find vulnerabilities and they don't get paid. You don't pay them, they just find vulnerabilities. So what you would do is you'd say, we'd really like to create one of these. A representative from one of the bug bounty platforms would talk you through it, talk you through the process, explain it all to you, how it works, how to set bounties, what kind of vulnerabilities you can expect, how to set up your security team. All that is handled by the program, and you make the choice. You make the choice to engage with that, and you make the choice to make that part of your security program. You absolutely do not have to like engage with it if it's not something that you wanted to happen. If you do get somebody contacting you that says, I'm a bug bounty hunter, I found this vulnerability, give me money. I would recommend you fix the vulnerability and then tell them no, because that is blackmail, that is illegal, and you should absolutely pursue legal avenues for that, whether that is, you know, talking to the police, or whether, especially if they're extorting you.
And I'm going to assume if you're a company with a public website, or maybe even not necessarily advertising publicly, you can approach these forums and ask to be part of it, and not encourage, but allow people legally to have a look and see if they can find anything wrong.
Yeah, I mean, a good hybrid is if you're like watching this from a more organizational point of view, Detectify is a really great place to start. So Detectify has an automated scanner, which is based off of findings that their bug bounty program people find. And that's a great place to start if you're not necessarily sure. You also have a Synac Red Team, which is where they have vetted hackers approaching hacking. And HackerOne also has a vetting process called HackerOne Clear, where they actually need security clearance in order to hack. So there's a lot of choice on the market for, if you're interested, what it could be. You have Integrity, which is a European-based platform if you want to stay in Europe. HackerOne is based in America, as is BugCrowd, and as is Synac, I think, as well. ZeroCopter is another EU-based platform.
Okay, again, multiple questions coming up, and to answer the question, you are on YouTube, you are on LinkedIn, and you are on Google, and people can search you and find your YouTube offerings.
Yeah, it's Inside a PhD, as in inside a threat, not inside a, and PhD, the academic qualification, not the programming language PHP, inside a PhD.
That's completely obvious to me, Katie. Anyway, where we're going to from here, do you need the free program, or do you have to pay for it? Is it better either way?
So it is completely depending on your business needs. If you are interested, if you run security for your organization, or it's something you're interested in, I would really recommend having a chat with some of the platforms, because they can give really tailored advice like that, depending on what your needs are. A vulnerability disclosure, or like security.txt file, is really good for having a security contact in place. And if you don't necessarily have the infrastructure set up to be able to support a bug bounty program, vulnerability disclosure is a great place to start. I would seriously recommend speaking to the platforms, because they have all of the data on what is best, but be aware you are being sold to. So it is completely like up to you how you choose to engage with that. But even just a security.txt is a great place to start.
Okay, right. And again, I'm getting questions coming up relating to the application that you were interrogating, and I'm sure that people will actually realize by now that, yeah, you created it with the bugs, and yes, you can virtually change anything, I guess, which is fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay. So
it is. There we go. That was that window. Yeah, all of it is made by me.
Right. Okay. I have to say, Katie, that a number of people are saying thank you very much indeed. Although it was very, very quick fire, they do seem to have appreciated your presentation, and I suspect there's a number of people who want to come back and re-watch it, hopefully, we can make it available to them. I don't see any reason why not.
Yes, I will do some little advertisement for people who would like to find my YouTube channel but can't be bothered to search. I'm going to post it in the chat for everyone. Oh God.
Okay.
This is my YouTube channel.
Okay, so this is obviously going to answer a few questions for people directly, and obviously they can pick up the links and try them, and obviously they have to be careful. They have to get permission. They have to use the formal bug investigation platforms, and I repeat again, not go wild and just start to look for vulnerabilities without formal permission. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's 7:30, so we've gone the full hour. So I think what I'm going to suggest, Keith, is that if you want to wrap it up, although there are other questions coming through, I don't think we can answer each individual personally, so to speak. They can only be answered generically. And as you said at our preamble a couple of days ago, Katie, there is a huge amount of interest and lots of people firing in different questions, and it was fascinating to watch. Keith, can I pass over?
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, John, and particularly thank you, Katie, for an illuminating presentation and demo. So on behalf of the BCS Wiltshire branch and our panelist, Katie, thank you once again for joining us today. Hope to see you again on a future event. Thank you very much, and have a great rest of your evening. Goodbye.